So everyone's Alerii, hope you're staying safe, staying well, all that jazz. And today I'm going to be continuing the Beauties Through Time series, finally, because I had a real Sims block with this series. Like, the reason why I kind of stopped doing this series for a while was because I just had a major Sims block. Like, I really didn't want to create any Sims for this series because there's just so much research and effort into that I put into this series, into making it, that I just kind of didn't want to do that for a while. Like, as much as I love research, I just needed a break sometimes. So now I'm back because I kind of re-sparked my sudden interest in doing this series, and I re-sparked me loving historical things when I was scrolling through Pinterest. So thank you, Pinterest. And so today I'm going to be talking about the 60s, the culture of the 60s, kind of how fashion evolved through the 60s, and the different subcultures in the 60s. And one thing to note is that I'm going to kind of be changing the format of this series slightly. So before, I used to make one sim and just make all of their outfits. So, there's everyday, formal, party, whatever, sleepwear and stuff like that. So I would, if you know from my old videos, I would just make one sim, make the sim a backstory, and then just, make all of their outfits, and then kind of just explain a bit about the culture of the era, and then that was it. That format isn't bad, but it was kind of burning me out because I only made one sim and I didn't explore the different subcultures of that era. Because one thing that I really like, that I have said in past videos, is that I really like learning about new subcultures, new aesthetics, all of that, new styles. That's one thing I really like, and I really like how learning about how fashion evolved through an era or through a period of time. So I've kind of changed the format to help, with me, what's the word? So kind of align with the way I do things, I guess. Yeah. So I'm not going to create all of the Sims outfits. I'll only create one outfit, but I will be explaining about that subculture in detail. So I think this layout will really help me, and it will make things more interesting for me and hopefully for you. So enough rambling about that. Let's actually get into what the 60s were about, and kind of what the era was known for. The 60s was marked as a change towards social attitude. So a lot of attitudes towards fashion changed, and you can see that when you go from the late 50s to the early 60s, right as even though the early 60s was still very much influenced by the late 50s fashion, a huge subculture, or an overarching theme of the 60s was being created, and this is the teenager, or the idea of the teenager. So the teenager was obviously not a child, but the teenager wasn't obviously an adult. The idea of a teenager created a middle way between a completely youth style and a completely mature style. So this is kind of the basics for many 60s styles and many 60s subcultures, but mainly the mod subculture, which I will talk about right after this. So adding on to the whole idea of the teenager, During the 60s, a lot of young people were able to have more money, and due to the economic boom, what's the word? Economic prosperity of the 60s, many young people could afford to actually wear what they want and to buy what they want because they had money. So a lot of fashion started to be dominated by youth, and you can see this in the 60s when companies started to market themselves towards youth fashion and youth subcultures because it was becoming very popular. And this was actually a big twist, because fashion before was mainly dominated by wealthy, high elites who were upper class or upper middle class, and they usually dominated the fashion scene. They usually made the trends and usually made everything trendy. But in the 60s, there was a sudden turning point where, well, boomers nowadays got sudden economic prosperity, where they were able to do their own things and actually make a whole what's the word? I guess even their own subculture, I would say. It also leads into the theme of rebellion and really how the 60s and fashion really shows the social attitudes towards certain topics and certain revolutions that were happening then. I'm not going to say the word because, well, I did say the word, but I'm going to say it quietly because YouTube is very weird about this. So that was a kind of introduction to the 60s and how it really became a very bright and colourful decade for fashion, and a very innovative and experimental era for fashion that really, I think, changed the way fashion was forever. And I really mean that, because many aspects of the 60s are still very popular today, like the modernists or the mods, which I'm about to get into right about now. So the modernists or the mods were a subculture which was very much driven by youth. The subculture of the modernists were very much based on music and fashion. So modernists listened to modern jazz, ska, soul, and yeah, I think that's it. And it originated in London, which at this time period was nicknamed Swinging London because of the cultural revolution that was happening back in London. But I'll get to that later in the video as well. So yeah, it originated in London in the late 50s, but during the swinging 60s or swinging London swinging London era was where modernists as a subculture really started to kick off. Mods didn't really see themselves in the previous generation, which was their parents. While the previous generation was mainly about work, responsibilities, jobs, the modernists really just wanted to have fun and, wear designer clothes and be trendy and really invest their hard-earned disposable income in being cool, basically. So they took a lot of inspiration from French and Italian films, and they were, I saw an article where they were kind of seen, not an article, I saw a photo, where they were seen riding Vespers and very, trendy vehicles at the time. So it was a very sophisticated yet modern, as in the name, style. My sim Chelsea Maddox is wearing the mod style, and I would say that she is very similar to the mods. She has that kind of very fresh, trendy, young look going on, which really exaggerates kind of the mod style. She has, the kind of Twiggy eye look, who was a very I think she was a very big mod influence, and she has the very bright colours which a lot of mods wore. And she also had a certain androgynous quality to her. I feel like it's kind of the short haircut, because it kind of balances the feminine and masculine traits of the style. A lot of female mods wore androgynous looks, which were you know, short pixie cuts or bobs, and a lot of them did wear men's clothes. So that was a very prominent and trendy thing for female mods. But when the swinging 60s came, a lot of them started to wear more feminine elements, and you can really see the difference between early mods versus middle to late 60s mods, because you can see them, the late 60s mods, more feminine and, you know, wearing like mini skirts and stuff, which I'll also get into later in the video, while the early mods wore like pixie cuts like Chelsea, and yeah, that's basically the main difference, and more androgynous clothes. But Chelsea's wearing like a mixture of kind of androgynous yet feminine, I guess, style. So I don't have a style for Chelsea's, but it's more a mishmash of early and mid mods. So sorry if it's a bit confusing, but I took inspiration from many different photos, so I didn't check the dates. So sorry that it's a bit of a mishmash, but yeah, that's basically Chelsea. One thing to add is that the mods did take a lot of inspiration from Twiggy, who was a very popular mod icon. If you don't know Twiggy, she was a British model who just was a fashion icon in the 60s. She was very popular. She really exaggerated the whole teenager look, as I was talking about earlier, and I think in some of her shoots she was actually like 16 or something when she was found, which is actually crazy, because like that is very young to be a fashion icon, but it's also very impressive as well, so props to Twiggy. There was also like the short shift dress, which was a very iconic mod women's garment, and it was worn with bold colors or geometric shapes or black and white, and I believe this is what Chelsea is wearing. Yeah, I believe she's wearing a short shift dress with a striped top under it. Mod makeup was very minimum as well. There was no like lipstick or strong foundation, but with my sim I did put some very light pink blush on her to kind of give that doll-like look, which was very popular in the 60s and 70s. And I also did the little like Twiggy eye look, which was like lots of lashes. But the Twiggy eye look was very like simple yet kind of expressive, so that's what I really think fitted my sim. And I also added some earrings that were very like kind of funky earrings. I love them so much, they're very cute. My sim also has coloured tights, which were also a very iconic mod item to wear. A lot of mods loved experimental clothes, so colourful tights was definitely one of the clothes they wore. So I believe that's it with mods. I've kind of explained as best as I could. I will link some resources that I did use, so maybe if you want to have a read more on the mod style, you can, because I obviously didn't explain all about the mod style because I'll be here for hours, but that's kind of the rundown of what I researched about the mod style. Next, I'm going to be talking about the Beatniks, or the Beat Generation. So first of all, the Beat Generation was a literacy movement which started in the early 50s to mid 60s, and it was really the fundamentals for youth counterculture, which you'll see a lot in the 60s, which is basically youth going against the traditional values of their parents or the norm in that world, in their society. So it was very like beat counterculture was very anti-materialism, anti-capitalism, anti-authoritarian. So it really granted people to kind of explore like who they are themselves, and it essentially was like the alt subculture or alternative subculture of the 60s. They were basically the hipsters before hipsters were hipsters. In politics, they tended to be more left-leaning, most of them democratic or center-left leaning, and a lot of them were influenced by African American culture, which you can see in the music they also listened to, which was like jazz and rock and roll and R&B, which were all pretty much created by African American musicians. So they did embrace African American culture a lot, and they did support anti-racist policies. When the idea of the beatniks started to get more popular, it started to become an almost trope, or I guess media, a media trope for younger students, younger people, etc. For women, beatnik fashion was black tights, leggings, pants halfway up the leg, dark glasses, chest-knotted shirt, or large sweaters. Also shoes without heels, or sometimes simply barefoot and long hair. In addition to this, many beatniks also wore berets, and you'll see that a lot. It's a very common theme that I saw when researching beatniks. Women also had long, straight and unadorned hair to rebel against the middle-class standards of beauty salons. And again, this ties into the whole theme of rebellion, as 60s fashion really centers itself around this theme, and a lot of subcultures really show different ways of rebellion, and they almost take their own spin of what rebellion means, because the idea of rebellion for the mods was way different to the idea of rebellion with the beatniks, and they were mainly both middle class, so it was very interesting to see how rebellion presented itself in these two subcultures. My sim, Ashvi Diaz, is a beatnik, and I really love her outfit. It's giving very dark academia, which I feel like beatniks definitely inspired that style, because I see a lot of it. I see a lot of beatnik style in dark academia, especially like the sleekness and the very limited and muted color palette, and the very the kind of plaid patterns. I think that's what, it's plaid. And yeah, just very simplistic look that reminds me a lot of dark academia. And the makeup, there was basically not really a beatnik makeup. Most of the beatnik makeup that I saw on women it was just basically like dark eyeshadow. That was it basically, and some eyelashes. Not much going on. So I really try to show that in Ashvi, and yeah, I think this style is very, very cool, and this subculture was very cool to learn about. The beatniks brought new ideas to the Western world, and just new ways of thinking about life, and new ways of thinking about rebellion. It doesn't have to be anything bold, but it can be in simple ways, like basically just how this subculture created or manifested itself through art, culture and literature, and just expressing it in such interesting ways. So that's about it for the beatnik subculture. I had lots of fun looking up, researching this subculture. So I really recommend also researching it, or just having a go at reading some of the sources that I will put in the description. I really recommend these because it's just really fun to learn about new subcultures, and different subcultures that were expressing themselves in different ways in different time periods. So that's it for the beatniks, and I will be moving on to my last sim, who is Chantel Francis. Chantel doesn't really have a specific subculture, so there's just lots of different things that kind of made this sim. So it's like individual pieces, I would say, that made this sim. So I'm going to be talking about stuff that I didn't really mention with the mod subculture and the beatnik subculture. So the first thing is the miniskirt. Mary Quant is often credited with popularizing and creating the miniskirt, but there's been different sources saying that there's lots of other creators, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to just pinpoint Mary Quant as the creator, but if you know any other creators, feel free to say in the comments. But onto the miniskirt. So the miniskirt was really credited as having a huge impact on the youth culture of the 60s, especially in swinging London or London. The miniskirt really symbolized a political youth movement where teenagers really didn't want to dress like their parents, and they really wanted to be able to express themselves in a playful and rebellious way, which represented the shift in societal dynamics between generations. The miniskirt really reminds me of the flapper revolution of the 20s because of its significance of the changing attitudes of women, like women no longer wanting to hide themselves, women wanting to express themselves, be themselves more, and live their life in a youthful and fun and playful way. And it just really kind of I just see the big similarity here between the two eras. The miniskirt conveyed newfound freedom and women be able to just express their sexuality and their inner self, and just being able to be more creative and more vibrant with who they are and how they like to express themselves. Yeah, the miniskirt was a huge tool in helping this youth culture that really prided itself on expressing yourself. So relating this back to my sim, I believe Chantel is kind of all about this. You can just see the way, like in the way she dresses, she's just really proud of herself. She just wants to, you know, do things her own way, and it's just, I know, I love this style so much. The miniskirt just really just tops everything off. It really makes the outfit. And also the boots. These boots were like really popular in the 60s. They were called go-go boots, and they were really popular in London, and they were very much inspired by the space age fashion happening in the 60s, basically because of the in the later 60s, the idea of traveling to space was very exciting. And obviously in 1969 the first human went onto the moon, so that the fashion really like reflected the excitement and that achievement of man actually going onto the moon. So that's where go-go boots come in. They really reflect that kind of spacey, futuristic kind of chic. So I really wanted a pair of the miniskirt because it was a huge fashion trend in the 60s and also in London. So yeah, Chantel's also wearing her natural hair, and I also want to have a little snippet to talk about the natural hair movement. Although this was very popular in the United States, I have seen many people in London in the 60s wearing their natural hair, so I did want a little snippet to talk about this because just FYI, all my sims are kind of UK based, so I think this is one of the only beauties through time where my sims are not like American, because I think most of my sims have been American based. Yeah, so Chantel is Black British, so I haven't seen many records on the Black British experience. I believe that the natural hair movement did spread to the UK to some extent due to the shared experience of the way black hair was treated, black natural hair was treated in both the UK and the US, which was basically, it was treated like a nuisance because many employers told black people that they couldn't be employed unless they straightened their hair, which created a lot of hatred. A lot of black people had hatred for their natural hair, so the natural hair movement was just a way to take back that power and just show how beautiful natural is. So I do believe that there was definitely some form of natural hair movement in the UK in the 60s. I'm sure there was, because I did see some photos of people wearing their natural hair, but then again, it could have just been a daily thing and not a movement. But even that, I just wanted to have like a little snippet to talk about that, because it's just such an interesting part of the 60s, just black people taking their power back. I just love to see it. And you know, I want to continue talking about different black topics that are still relevant today, because the natural hair movement is still going on today due to the still stigma of natural hair that is in everyday life and workplaces. So yeah, I just wanted to like a little snippet to talk about that. But that's basically it for Chantel. As I said before, her sim is just a combination of different things that went on, or different styles that went on in the 60s. But the 60s was a time where a lot of black people really rocked their natural hair and just, you know, just let it be. And I find that so beautiful. I really, really love that. Yeah, I think I am done overall for the 60s. So as a little outro, just to recap, the 60s was a time of innovation, because we had the miniskirt, we had go-go boots, and we had subcultures such as beatniks and mods, which challenged the status quo in many different ways. While the beatniks were a subculture movement that focused on literature, art, and fashion, challenging the status quo through anti-capitalism, anti-consumerism, anti-materialism, the mods challenged the status quo through the rejection of the ideals of their parents, and dressed in such bold and vibrant ways, which really contrast the ideals of the previous generation, who wanted, you know, hard work, traditional values, and very simple dress. They really challenged us through their vibrant colors and their very dramatic and exaggerated, just the way, you know, they dressed up, which was also inspired by icons like Twiggy. So this is the end of the 60s Beauties Through Time video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I had so much fun researching it. All sources will be linked below in the description. So yeah, before you go, please check out the description box below for links, petitions, and cards to help minority communities. I would really appreciate that. And if you like this video, like and subscribe and share if you want. And I think that's it. So thank you for watching. That is the 60s done, and I will see you guys next video. So goodbye.